Okay, let this serve as a review for exam 3 for ethics. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the questions. I don't know if they're randomized or not, but I'll try to talk through them, especially if you can't make the Zoom. Okay, so for Girard, religion and its scapegoat mechanism are designed to temper human violence with violence, namely scapegoating. Right, remember that the scapegoat mechanism in religion, they're using violence to temper violence by scapegoating, but people don't know it, okay? So that question seems straightforward. For Girard, Christianity remains inextricably wedded to the mythic violent sacred, since it argues for the concern for victims, the oppressed, and the persecuted. No, Christianity is something that breaks free from the mythic violent sacred, precisely because it reveals the scapegoat mechanism, which in turn allows for this new ethics to emerge. So what is the scapegoat mechanism for Girard? Explain. That's in the videos. I don't want to really go through the essays, but what I'm looking for something like that is that it's an unconscious mechanism to control violence. And it's the foundation for our religion. It's where the altar comes from. What is mimetic desire? Why does it lead to conflict and violence? Remember, there's a model for a desire. The model eventually becomes the obstacle. In other words, when two people want something, it increases the desire for something. Or when someone wants something, then I want it, then all of a sudden that person's in competition for it. Mimetic desire is imitative desire. Please summarize as best you can Girard's argument in thesis in chapter 13 of your text. That's really interesting, his argument about how this postmodern concern for victims has become weaponized and re-wedded to the mythic sacred. The idea that we can now only persecute in the name of victims. So this would be a Nietzschean argument, really, that social justice is really vengeance in the name of victims, in a certain sense. For Kant, religion and morality are inextricably bound, since they both deal with the metaphysical, i.e. that which transcends the physical and empirical world, right? Metaphysics, like morality, is non-physical. It's metaphysical. Religion, like morality, is metaphysical. It's meta-empirical. Relativism is true. Well, that can't be true, right? Because if relativism is true, then that would mean everything is relative, in which case everything is relative would be true. But if everything is relative would be true, the opposite would be true, because somebody could say, well, relativism is false, or everything isn't relative. That would be true too, since that would be relative to that person. So that's another version of that question, everything is false, or there is no truth. In a Kantian deontological approach to ethics, one that emphasizes duty, one must regard the physical sentiment of compassion over and above all other sentiments, including respect. No, for Kant, remember, even compassion, if it controls the will, and if someone's compassionate, but not out of respect for the dignity of another human being, that's not a morally praiseworthy action, right? So that's no good. Kant, although a deontologist who argues for the intrinsic worth of the human being and the duty one ought to have toward that worth, nevertheless maintains, under certain circumstances and within a certain context, human beings can and ought to be used as a mere means. No, for Kant, the categorical imperative is always treat a human being as an end and never merely as a means, okay? So it's never okay for Kant to treat someone as a mere means. Kant argues in the end that the only deontological, morally praiseworthy action is one done in mere conformity with duty, namely an action done for an undignified person. False. Ooh. In other words, an action done for the sake of duty, not merely conformity with duty, is in the end the only morally praiseworthy action for Kant. Kant argues that one should never act unless one can will that one's act or maxim, i.e. one's subjective principle of volition, be a universal law. Okay, that seems pretty straightforward. Let's see. Kant thinks that we should not treat everyone with dignity, since we do not necessarily possess it. Remember, Kant thinks everyone possesses dignity, and therefore we should treat everybody with dignity. Utilitarianism, or consequentialism, argues against the notion of the greatest good for the greatest number of people in favor of a deontological emphasis on intrinsic human worth and dignity. For Kant, what is the condition for the possibility, i.e. ground of all ethics, ethical judgments, decision, reasoning, etc.? What else? In your philosophical estimation and opinion, what is the origin and source of objective morality and human dignity? I'm asking for your opinion. Okay, remember, please don't regurgitate some kind of relativism or some kind of easy idea. I'm looking for you to incorporate what you've learned in this class. Okay.